You were never born thinking you were worthless. No child comes into this world believing they don't matter. That idea, that deep-rooted belief that somehow you're not good enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, not important enough, that was taught to you. It was absorbed, not chosen. You learned to see yourself as less, not because it was the truth, but because someone else believed it, and you were too young to question it. You accepted it, and that acceptance became your inner reality. The mind is a remarkable instrument. It operates on programs, mental habits installed through repetition, through authority, through emotional impact. In your early years, you didn't have the capacity to critically evaluate the ideas being poured into you. You simply accepted them as facts. It's someone you trusted, maybe a parent, a teacher, a coach, told you, you're not trying hard enough. You're a disappointment. Why can't you be more like? You didn't process those words as careless remarks. You internalized them. You felt them. They became statements about your identity. Not, I did something wrong, but I am wrong. That's how it begins. Quietly, subtly, deeply. And then you grow up. You move through life carrying this invisible programming that tells you're not enough. You don't hear it out loud, but it echoes in your choices. You turn down opportunities because you don't think you're ready. You tolerate disrespect in relationships because somewhere inside, you don't believe you deserve better. You don't play your achievements, laugh off compliments, settle for less. All because this silent program keeps whispering, who do you think you are? You think this is your personality. You say things like, I've always been insecure. I've never been confident. I just overthink everything. But that's not who you are that's who you've become under the weight of someone else's influence. That's the result of unchallenged programming. It's a script you didn't write, but you've been living it out like it's gospel. This isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility to change it. Because here's what most people don't realize, your mind doesn't care whether a belief helps you or hurts you. It just takes whatever you feed it and turns it into a program. That means you can feed it the belief that you're unworthy, and it'll work hard to make sure your actions, your emotions, and your results match that belief. It'll filter the world so that you see proof everywhere. Proof that you're not good enough, not lovable, not capable. But none of that is real. It's just the lens you're looking through. You were conditioned to believe something false. And because you believed it long enough, it began to feel true. But truth and belief are not the same thing. You can believe a lie and build your entire life around it. And that's exactly what so many people are doing. They're living lives shaped not by truth, but by misperception, by someone else's doubt, someone else's fear, someone else's projection. Think about it, how often do you talk to yourself in ways you'd never speak to someone you love? How often do you replay mistakes, magnify flaws, minimize strengths? That voice in your head isn't yours. It was planted there. You didn't choose it. You inherited it. And it's time to give it back. Because until you confront that voice, until you expose it for the fraud that is, it will continue to control you. And not just emotionally, it will control what you allow yourself to pursue. It will control how much success you can handle before you sabotage it. It will control your standards, your relationships, your finances, your health, everything. You see, the way you treat yourself sets the tone for your entire life. If you carry the belief that you are somehow less than others, that you have to prove your value constantly, that you must earn your worth through effort, sacrifice, or suffering, you will continue to find situations and people that reinforce that exact belief. Not because life is cruel, but because you are attracting what you are projecting. Your self-worth isn't just a private feeling, it's a frequency, it radiates. And the world responds to it. Most people are not suffering because of what's happening around them. They're suffering because of what's happening within them. And what's happening within them is almost always the result of programming they never examined. You weren't born to feel small. You weren't born to question your value. You were taught to. You were modeled uncertainty. You were fed criticism, comparison, scarcity. You were handed limitations like hand-me-downs and told, this is just how life is. But that was a lie. And the only reason it still feels real is because you haven't replaced it with something better. Your worth doesn't come from your performance. It's not tied to what you achieve or how perfectly you behave. You were born worthy. That never changed. What changed is your awareness of that worth. And the goal now isn't to go out and become worthy. It's to strip away everything that ever made you believe you weren't. That's what real inner work is. It's not about becoming more. It's about remembering who you are. And here's the truth. Your current self-image is nothing more than a reflection of old beliefs. If you believe you're not valuable, you'll act like someone who isn't. You'll speak like it, when you walk like it, decide like it, show up like it, and the world will respond accordingly, not because it's true, but because you've made it your truth. But if you start to shift that image even slightly, if you begin to tell yourself a new story, if you start acting as though you are valuable, important, capable, you begin to rewrite the program. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but it does begin with awareness. You have to stop agreeing with the lies. You have to interrupt the cycle. When you catch yourself thinking thoughts like, I can't do this, or I don't matter, don't let them pass unnoticed. Question them. Ask yourself, who told me that? When did I start believing this? Is this thought helping me or hurting me? Because every time you challenge that belief, when you loosen its grip, every time you speak to yourself with compassion instead of criticism, you're breaking the pattern. You're training your mind to accept a new standard, a standard that aligns with truth, not fear. The moment when the world outside of you is a mirror of what's happening inside you. If you walk around believing you're unworthy, life will reflect that back to you, not because it's trying to punish you, because you've instructed your subconscious mind to expect it. And your mind will go to great lengths to ensure that what you expect is what you get. That's the nature of belief. It seeks confirmation. But when you begin to shift your internal narrative, when you start treating yourself like someone who matters, like someone who belongs, like someone who deserves to be seen and heard and respected, your external world starts to change too. The way you treat yourself is the foundation for everything else. And if that foundation is cracked, nothing you build will feel stable. You'll achieve goals and still feel empty. You'll earn respect from others and still feel like a fraud. You'll be loved and still feel alone. Because the real work isn't out there. It's in here. Until you reclaim your worth at the deepest level. Everything else will feel like you're just trying to prove something. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to remember. When you've remembered the feeling of worthlessness was planted, it is not native to your spirit. It is not your identity. It's a layer of noise that needs to be cleared away so you can hear your true voice again. That voice, the one buried under years of shame, comparison, rejection, criticism. It's still there. It's been waiting. And the moment you stop treating yourself like you're worthless, that voice will speak again. It will guide you, empower you, remind you of what you were always meant to become. You can never outperform your self-image. That's a truth most people never come to realize, and yet it governs every part of their lives. The way you see yourself, what you believe you are capable of, what you think you deserve, how you perceive your own worth, sets the upper limit on what you can achieve, what you're willing to ask for, and how you allow others to treat you. It's the blueprint for your entire existence. And if the image you hold of yourself is rooted in limitation, in fear, in inadequacy, then no amount of external validation, no amount of heart, no amount of temporary success will ever bring lasting fulfillment or transformation. Because the external world is always reflecting the internal image. It doesn't matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter how many skills you've developed or how many degrees you've earned. If you don't believe you're worthy, your results will reflect the disbelief. You will find ways to pull yourself back down. You unconsciously sabotage your own progress. You'll settle for less, not because that's what you want, but because that's what your self-image is calibrated for. And the moment you start to rise beyond it, when you'll feel uncomfortable, almost guilty, because you're stepping outside of the identity you've been conditioned to live by. You may chase success, work hard, put in long hours, hustle for recognition, but if underneath all of the effort there's still a belief that says, I'm not enough, then your energy will be mismatched. It's that moment when you'll always feel like you're chasing something you don't truly believe you deserve. And when it finally arrives, when the relationship shows up, when the opportunity lands, when the promotion comes, you won't be able to fully receive it. You'll question it. You'll doubt it. You'll feel like an imposter. Because your self-image hasn't caught up to your circumstances. And when your internal picture doesn't match your external reality, the subconscious mind does everything in its power to restore the familiar. That's why people lose what they gain. That's why they walk away from good things. That's why they keep repeating the same cycles with different faces, different jobs, different cities, because their self-image hasn't changed. The subconscious mind operates like a thermostat. It's set at a certain level, and it works night and day to keep you at that setting. If your thermostat is set to unworthy, then anything in your life that suggests otherwise, love, abundance, success, will feel off. It won't feel like home when and if you don't consciously reset the thermostat, you'll eventually cool things back down to match the setting you're used to. This isn't about intelligence. It's not about talent. It's about programming. And that programming is what determines the self-image. You didn't choose the image you currently hold. You inherited it. You absorbed it. You constructed it based on the words and behaviors of the people around you. People who may have been dealing with their own pain, their own limitations, their own distorted self-image. But the image you inherited isn't permanent. It's not carved in stone. It's a reflection, not a destiny. And the power to change it lies entirely within you. You change the image and everything else begins to shift because now you're not just working hard, you're working in alignment with belief. In this moment when you're no longer trying to prove your worth, you're operating from the knowing that you already are worthy. That changes the tone of everything. You carry yourself differently. You speak more clarity. You move with more conviction. And people notice. The world responds to someone who is deeply rooted in their own value. Not arrogance, not entitlement, but certainty. Think about the people you admire. The ones who seem to walk into a room and own it. Not by force, not by volume, but by presence. That presence doesn't come from what they're wearing or how much money they have. It comes from their self-image. They see themselves as someone who belongs. And because they believe it, others accept it. That's how energy works. People will treat you the way you unconsciously instruct them to. If you don't value yourself you'll attract people who don't either. If you question your own worth, you'll find yourself surrounded by situations that reinforce that question. But the moment you shift the image, really shift it, those same people, those same patterns begin to fade. They no longer match your frequency. It's it's not enough to say affirmations or write out goals. Those things are tools. But if the image you're carrying hasn't changed, you'll resist the very things you're trying to attract. You can't say, I am confident, while still holding the image of someone who hides, who shrinks, who apologizes for their existence. The subconscious doesn't respond to words. It responds to belief. And belief is formed through repetition, through feeling, through experience. You have to see yourself differently over and over again until that new image becomes more familiar than the old one. Visualization is not a fantasy. It's mental rehearsal. Every time you picture yourself as confident, as capable, as valuable, you are literally reprogramming your mind. You're carving new pathways. You're telling the subconscious, this is who we are now. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. But here's the catch. You can't just think the image, you have to live it. That means acting the person you want to become, even before you feel fully ready. It means setting boundaries, speaking up, taking risks, choosing differently. Because behavior reinforces belief. When you take action in alignment with your new self-image, you prove to your subconscious that the change is real. You've got to ask yourself, what kind of person would I be if I truly believed I was worthy? How would you speak? How would you walk? What would you say no to? What would you stop tolerating? Who would you surround yourself with? When you start to live as that version of you, the outer world begins to shift to match it. Opportunities arise. People treat you with more respect. You feel more grounded, more focused, more powerful. Not because the world changed, but because you did. But none of this happens until you make a decision, a real decision. Not to chase more, not to become more, but to see yourself differently, to recognize that your self-image is the foundation, and that every result in your life is a reflection of what that image has allowed. You can't fix external problems with internal insecurity. You've got to go to the source. And the source is the story you've been telling yourself about who you are and what you're worth. You are not here to live small. You are not here to shrink, to fit in, to water yourself down so that other people feel more comfortable. You are here to live fully, to express the fullness of who you are, to step into the highest version of yourself, not someday but now. And the only thing standing in your way is the image you keep clinging to. That old image, the one shaped by past pain, by other people's opinions, by moments of failure and rejection, it doesn't define you. It never did. But as long as you continue to identify with it, your life will reflect it. You don't need to earn your worth. You were born with it. But you do need to remember it. It's that moment when you need to choose it. You need to stop waiting for the outside world to validate what has to come from within. Because once the image changes, once you begin to see yourself clearly, truthfully, everything else will rise to meet that image. Your life will always expand to the level of your self-image. And the decision to change, it is the most important decision you will ever make.